Hey Ted, it's Monday, July 23rd. This is a recap of our second lesson together, um, where we again continue to work on your full swing. We reviewed some of the club face components and kind of expounded upon some of those that we began last week, and we also added um, an emphasis on getting your club on plane a little bit more consistently. If you remember the first video, without even addressing plane, we found a way to actually get that club on a pretty good plane line there. But over the course of the last week, with the focus being on the face, the club kind of moved off there. So we addressed the body position and got the club back closer there. If we look at the video on the left, this is the swing you made right away today. I believe you have a pitching wedge in your hand there. And if we take a look at the backswing, I mean, this is about exactly what we talked about last week. This is, a great twist away backswing where we see a nice flat left wrist. We see the club face towards the sky, and we actually see the club face, slightly across the line, which is a great position for what we're hoping to turn into a former slicer as yourself to hit little draws. So absolutely ideal in terms of what we talked about last week. One thing you will notice is kind of in the transition, and again you'll notice that left shoulder kind of, you start to unwind very quickly. The club then tends to stand up a little bit. It's kind of way outside that line, and along with that it's actually, and we lose it a little bit, off video, but we actually start to see that club face just kind of open ever so slightly. So in this position, ideally, we'd still see some of the logo on your glove. We'd still see some of the club face to know the shaft of the club was twisting towards the camera. So when we get about right here, we might actually catch a little glimpse of a few of the grooves on the face and whatnot. So that's something you can continue to work on in your transition. Like we said, twist that shaft label away from you or back towards the target, or essentially keep that edge of the card off your hands. We'll also notice that because we started to kind of turn our chest towards the target, or lost a lot of our hip turn very early, either way you want to look at it, the club got kind of thrown way off plane and kind of came outside in, and he actually hit a pretty solid shot there. But, ideally to hit, some sort of draw, we'd have the club a little closer to line. So the first thing we really mentioned is, trying to, and in the swing with a hybrid, which was later on in your lesson, and obviously it's a different club, so they're not dead comparable. But, again, you made that same great backswing, where we got a very flat left wrist, the club face more or less towards the sky, and the club pointing slightly right at the target, which is across the line, which is a great position to hit a draw from. And this time, as you swung down, we talked about keeping your belt buckle or retaining your hip turn, or keeping kind of your hips and your chest looking back towards the camera a little bit more. And when we do that, and it's just barely, the club's moving now and there hasn't really been a whole lot of unwind, it's just much, much easier to get the club, on that plane line. And again, it also helps that we're using a longer club, but you can definitely see kind of in these two positions, the club a lot more behind you, a lot more online, going to be delivered from the inside, going to be a much easier spot to hit a draw from. So continue to work on just making swings where you've always done a great job of getting your back to the target, and just feel like you kind of hold it there for a little bit longer, and that's a very, very good position to have the club in the picture on the right. We set a good drill to do that. Would be, again, drop that right foot back, a foot, and make some swings where you'll really feel that closed body, that retained hip turn. Also, one thing I did forget to mention is basically in the transition, we did that little drill to get used to, keep turning the face down or turning your logo, your glove, or the shaft label away from you, is kind of from this position. We gripped the club with just our left hand, and we choked all the way down on the bottom of the grip so the club was a little shorter, and we put our finger on the sweet spot. And rather than just pulling the club down, which especially in this video on the left, that would kind of be that pull down, and you could see how our finger might slide off of the club face about right in there, where we're more or less just pulling the club and it's not squaring. Again, put your finger on the sweet spot and start to turn the club face towards the ground a little bit. So in this position, ideally, we might see, rather than a leading edge of a golf club going up this way, we might see it turn down a little bit more that way, because then there'll just be less squaring to do. So we'd see a little bit more logo of your glove, we'd see a little bit more of the face turned down. But great job, just with that little thought of keeping your back to the target a little longer, getting the club kind of on plane. The last thing we really talked about was kind of, again, more club face control stuff, kind of a build on from last week, and that's where we put the head cover under your left armpit and talked about basically swiveling the club and rotating that whole left arm rather than letting your left wrist break down. And one thing we'll notice as we get the club a little further up is in the first video on the left here, the club face is basically, we can see all the grooves on the face is turned back towards the camera. Again, fairly open position, and as we worked on swiveling, keeping your left elbow, your upper left arm a little closer, in this you'll notice the club face, it's not turned right to the plane or right to the yellow line, but it's definitely not facing the camera either, so we have a little bit more of that rotation about the shaft, and the club's starting to rotate a little bit better. Definitely something we'll be able to see a little better from the other view. But one way or the other in both these swings, you got to a much fuller finish, like you were kind of towards the end of last week, as opposed to hanging back on your back foot. If we check out the other view for just a second. Again, video on the left is one of the first swings you made with the pitching wedge. Video on the right is a hybrid. Very good twist away backswing, very good turn away from the ball, and we can see right from the top we lose that logo on the back of your shirt because you just started to unwind too early, and that got the club kind of thrown off plane. And through impact, we notice this left wrist cups or bends back towards itself, and you'll also notice the elbow is going to bend a little bit, so we get quite a bit of bend here and a lot of bend right there in that left wrist. The face really hasn't squared up very nicely. So what we worked on with that head cover under your arm, and again, backswing, very nice twist away backswing, for maybe just a split second longer. Let's see where we lose the logo on your shirt. And it is a little longer swing, so not perfectly comparable. For maybe just a split second longer, we hold on to a little bit more of this hip turn. Where here your hips are more or less facing right at my camera, here they're facing kind of off in this direction somewhere. So a little bit behind the camera. So just that little bit of hip turn is helping the club get on a much better path. But anyway, if we get back to this kind of left arm position, as we put the head cover on there, and we said we could do this, also with the credit card on your left wrist, the club face squared very nicely. Again, this is a really, really good looking impact position. And through impact, again, we have just a little bit more toe rotation, so we don't see any of the face of the club. where here we kind of catch some of the face of the club again because the club hasn't quite rotated over. Still some bend in your left wrist and your left arm, but again, not quite at extreme where we see the elbow pointing towards the sky, and that rotation's getting quicker. In this picture, in either of these pictures, again, here's the kind of that logo on your glove. If we rotate the club enough, we'd actually see the logo of your glove would be pointing at the fence over here, and we'd actually see the palm of your left hand. So that's another visual where if you rotate that left arm more sooner, we'll see the palm of your glove in that situation, and that'll get rid of, you know, some of that left arm bend, which was improved here because we have a little more rotation, but again, kind of not perfect. And then again, you can see the club still rotating because we got the face pointing away from you, which is a good amount of rotation, but it's just kind of more sooner, and definitely, you know, an improvement was made, but that'll be something to continue to work on because we're going to learn to essentially overdo it and then, you know, kind of build back towards the middle. Like we said, in practice, if you hit a bunch of hooks, that's fine. So a couple new drills we added today along with your credit card drill. You can do that little in your backswing. Again, put your finger on the sweet spot, turn the club down. We want to help get the club on path more consistently. We want to avoid that early spin out, so you're going to feel like your back stays towards the target, or you keep that turn in your hips a little bit longer. And then, you know, the big one, put the club under, or the head cover under your left armpit, and just allow the left forearm to really rotate then. Because we can see here, we're starting to get a gap right in there, and, you know, that head cover would probably fall out if we had the ball there. Where, if we're a little bit closer to here, let me swing further up, we probably have enough rotation. Again, not a perfect amount of rotation. We need more than that, where we get the left palm facing the camera, the logo of the glove going towards the fence in that position, but enough to definitely keep the head cover there so we get a little less left arm bend. So one way or the other, good work today. If you continue to work on keeping your back to the target and just getting that club shaft to rotate, and that'll move the head of the club. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. So I appreciate you coming out, and I look forward to working with you again. Thanks.